Take this off for a second. Hi, I want to thank you all so much for being here today. As you know, I'm Sadiqa Reynolds, President and CEO of the Louisville Urban League, and I am joined today by some other community members who are obviously as concerned about this city as I am. You know them: Pastor F. Bruce Williams of Bates Memorial Baptist Church, Reverend Timothy Finley Jr. at Kingdom Fellowship, and someone who is not a resident of this city, Reverend Stephen A. Green. He is social justice pastor at Greater Allen Cathedral, in New York, and with Until Freedom. You all saw, as many people in Louisville did, the protests yesterday, and I think we all heard all kinds of information leading up to yesterday's announced protest. Until Freedom organized a protest. They told people where to show up. They made it very public, the time to show up. They have a history of organizing. They have no history of violence. They have no history of aggression towards police or any civilian. They just don't. They have been surveilled since they have been in our community, so police were well aware of their plans, and quite frankly, their plans were all over social media. But for whatever reason, there were a lot of rumors about what was supposed to happen yesterday. And it was clear from what we saw from police. We saw memos that said all hands on deck, all vacations canceled, everybody needs to work. So they obviously, law enforcement was expecting some big violent protest. And they dressed accordingly. They showed up with that mindset. As a leader in this city, as I observed the peaceful protest of people crying out for justice, and I watched our city response to peaceful protest, my heart was broken. In a city where we celebrate Ali, where so many of our leaders just spoke so highly of John Lewis, a man who was arrested over and over and over again for raising his voice for justice. In a country that celebrates Martin Luther King Jr., we are meeting peaceful protesters with a level of aggression that is unacceptable. Yesterday, police said to them, don't march in the street. So they moved to the sidewalks. Then they got to the sidewalks, and then they said, and now you can't go further. Then they had conflicting instructions. You'll hear from two people who were arrested yesterday. But I want our community, especially the business community, to pay attention. It is not right what is happening to peaceful protesters in our community. You cannot continue to push down pain that is still coming out peaceful and expect that nothing is going to eventually erupt. We are going to set the fire in our city if we don't respond appropriately. Do you understand that? Everybody was concerned when we had people who came from out of town and they said, oh, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. We are setting ourselves up here now to cross a line that I don't know how Louisville comes back from. We have got to have leadership from the business community. You have got to be willing to raise your voices to say, these people, our people, black people, white people, have a right to justice. It is not just them, it is all of us. We have a right to say we want justice. We have a right to peaceful protest. People should not be arrested for peaceful protest. Why couldn't they cross the bridge yesterday? Why? What was the reason for that? The police parking their cars blocked more traffic than any protester. It made no sense. It is as if they have this 7 o'clock in the morning, we got our orders, and that's what we're going to follow. Make no adjustments, even when the stimulus is clearly changed. It's unacceptable. And if you live in this city, if you do business in this city, if you love this city like I do, you have got to say something. You cannot continue to sit still. You cannot continue to be quiet. Your boarded up windows won't protect any of us. The problem is the boarded up hearts. That's the problem. You just keep seeing this like it's our pain. But I am a Louisvillian, like you are. And I am asking my colleagues, my friends in the business community, the white ones, the black ones, and everybody in between, to stand up and protect our right to process our pain and to speak for ourselves about the justice that we deserve in this community. And so with that, I am going to now turn it over to Reverend Stephen Green, who is here with us again with Until Freedom. Reverend Green was arrested yesterday and spent 17 hours in custody. And I'd like for you to hear from him. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Reverend Stephen A. Green, and I am the social justice pastor at the Great Allen Cathedral of New York and one of the organizers with Until Freedom. And we moved here on August the 8th to advance the cause of justice for our dear sister Breonna Taylor, and by and large to address the systemic problems that are at the root cause of this tragedy, which we know is to be poverty, militarism, and racism. As an organizer who cultivated, curated the idea of Good Trouble Tuesday, and you all know each Tuesday at 2 o'clock we have been doing trainings about nonviolent direct action, Kingian nonviolent philosophy. Our trainings have been open to the public. We know that the police knew about our trainings even before they sent out the memorandums. They knew our intentions, which was to engage in nonviolent direct action. And as soon as we arrived to the mayor's decision to prohibit peaceful demonstrations in the streets, infringing upon our First Amendment right of freedom of speech, this nation was birthed out of the opportunity to resist unjust laws. And for us to converge in Louisville, Kentucky, where the mayor is the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, to represent the nation. We are here at ground zero. We've said this time and time again that Louisville is our generation's Selma. And we are here to turn the light on the injustices that are grounded in this case and beyond this case. Dr. King said, in times of controversy, I won't remember the silence. I won't remember the loud voice of my enemies. I'll remember the silence of my friends. And so today we're calling upon all of our friends who are silent, who are watching us be dragged off into jail, spending over 18 hours incarcerated. And I believe that I was targeted because I was one of the organizers, the last one to be released. But that won't stop the fire. You can't dim our light, and you can't turn down our flame. We are more renewed and more inspired now in our pursuit of justice. People from all over the world are observing what took place yesterday and are beginning to call upon ways to amplify and to join in this struggle. So we're calling on this entire city to join hands with us as we collectively push back on these draconian decision of Mayor Greg Fisher to demand that peaceful protesters have the right to occupy our streets. We have the right. We have the duty. It is our righteous indignation that inspires us to move. We are walking in the tradition of John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer and Rosa Parks. And as we continue to lift up this family of Breonna Taylor in prayer, as we've seen the attacks, we want Louisville to know, and to all of our partners from across the nation and even across the world, that we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. You may try to stop us at the bridge. You may try to arrest us. You may come with your militarized equipment. You may come with your sticks and your riot gear. You may come with your tear gas and your rubber bullets. You may come with your chain gangs to shackle us together. You may come with all of your radical, draconian excuses. But we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Pastor Tim Finley of the Kingdom Fellowship Church will come now.
Again, thank you all. Pastor Timothy Findley, pastor of the Kingdom Fellowship Christian Life Center, founder of the Justice and Freedom Coalition. As a former employee of Metro government, as of March, as a part of the transition team for Governor Andy Beshear, I want to say this unequivocally, that we need new policing strategies. We need to rethink, reimagine policing in this country. Yesterday, it was absolutely peaceful, and yet we were met with what seemed to be hundreds of police officers. They were there, they were ultra aggressive, they were there in full riot gear, and it would have seemed that we showed up armed and ready to cause major issues, and that was not the case. What I am concerned about is that our city is at a tipping point. Our country is at a tipping point. And it's because, for some reason, we do not understand that black communities are policed different. Black bodies are handled differently. Yesterday, the world, the city got to see, and I said the world on purpose, because through social media, people are beginning to see that there is a problem in Louisville, Kentucky. There is an issue with the way that we're being handled. There is no leadership in our police department. As I sat on the ground, handcuffed, the very first one to be arrested yesterday, even engaging with the arresting officer, it was as if he did not understand that I was not a threat to him. The way that he handled me, the way that they handled young women was an embarrassment. As a law-abiding citizen, I can tell you that yesterday will not be the only time that this city will have to make a decision on how you're going to treat peaceful protesters. This was not a one-time thing. And I believe the city, the mayor, the governor, and everyone else in between will have to make a decision on if Black lives matter. Because right now, it does not seem that our lives matter. As Sadiqua and Reverend Green has so eloquently put, we're calling on the community, the business community, and I want to really put emphasis here. I'm calling on the Christian community, the religious community, pastors from area churches in this city and in this state, that you have to come out from your safe haven, that sanctuary, and really recognize what's going on in this city. We have a derby that's on its way. And nobody in the Black community feels like this is a festive time to celebrate horses. This is a time where our lives are on the line. And if we're going to celebrate Muhammad Ali, if we're going to lift up John Lewis and all the others, and then turn around and act as if peaceful protesting is foreign, then we're being hypocritical in what we say. So I'm asking you, those who are watching, to not simply Watch this on television, not simply watch this on social media, but join in this fight against injustice. Find out what you can do to help in this movement. This is not a moment. This is a movement, and this is just the beginning. Dr. F. Bruce Williams.
I'm Bruce Williams, pastor of the Base Memorial Baptist Church, and there's not a whole lot to add to what has already been eloquently stated here. Dr. King once said that one of the great glories of American democracy is the right to protest for right. And what is ironic to me is that many of the people who, in the face of what's going on in our community, who reference Dr. King and either explicitly or implicitly suggest that had they been there during that time, that they would have been on the right side of history. They think it's terrible what happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and the violence that peaceful protesters were met with, and yet they're either silent or on the wrong side of history now in their assessment of how the police are dealing with peaceful protesters. It's a shame in our own city, and I'm a resident here, I've been here all of my adult life. I have a pastorate that I've been here for 33 years. My members are taught that social justice is at the root of what the gospel is, and so they have been involved in protests throughout for the last 100 days or so. I was there at the jails waiting for the people to be released for the second time, and it is disturbing for me, very disturbing, that someone who peacefully protested would first of all be met with not just riot gear, but I was told that at one site, I was told by a white woman who was a part of the protest, an older white woman, that they were a tank rolled up. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? There's children, there's families there. They had already announced that it was peaceful protest, and you're in full riot gear, and a tank rolls up as if we're in Tiananmen Square in some communist country. And so that is absolutely and totally unacceptable. The city seems to be confused about where the emphasis should be. The emphasis seems to be put on the fruit or the consequences of racism rather than the root of racism. And until we have the courage in this city to face and deal with the racism that's in our city with more than rhetoric, that means policy changes and the like. And I believe that any politician who's in any office who is not interested in making a priority this issue of dismantling racism in every area, including injustice in criminal justice reform and police reform, should not be in office. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we get the right people in and the wrong people out. You've heard, and I can't emphasize this enough, and then I'll be finished. You've heard all of them talk about the pain in the black community. I'm afraid that the black community's pain has been ignored for so long that this city is misreading what they're seeing, and they're thinking that if we just wait this out, it'll all be over. This isn't one of those times. This isn't going away. This is not a fly-by-night issue. The pain of black people is real and has been inflicted on us and felt for 401 years. Here's the truth. We're tired. And black people are not going to settle for anything less than real, substantive change. Breonna Taylor's family is precious. What happened to them is precious to us. And we do want justice for her family, and we're going to be fighting until we get justice for her family. But her family and this fight for justice for her family is symbolically suggestive of something greater, a serious, seething problem in America. And either America is going to learn to handle and address it, or this issue is going to continue to handle America.
Just want to say a few things because I think it's worth noting. We highlight the amount of time that that Dr. Green was in custody because it's a bigger issue. We know every day, I certainly know, I am an attorney, I have served as a judge in this community. We know that people are arrested and held. We know how long it takes. And we're saying it's not fair for peaceful protesters. And in most cases, it's not acceptable or fair for regular random people in the community. We are not just highlighting the brokenness in this protest process. We are saying to you that you live in the wealthiest country in the world, and we are evicting people in the middle of a pandemic. Poor people who were already suffering. We want you to understand the policy under all that. And the communities mostly where they're being evicted from are the same communities that were redlined. So this is broken policy. Broken policies create broken communities that create broken people.
Right.
And speaking of that, we understand that the person who murdered that baby in our community, who allegedly committed that murder, has been arrested. We understand your concerns because we hear you say, well, what about the violence in your community? I'm going to educate you all one more time. Black on black crime, that's a made up phrase.
Right, yeah.
Black people kill black people. It is unfortunate. We hate that. And white people kill white people. That's the way it works. We live in a segregated society and people kill who they're around. Statistically, look it up.
That's right.
It's all about the same. So we are concerned. And when people say, well, they want to protest police, they want to talk about this, but they don't want to deal with their own community. Well, no. That's what I do every day. Jobs, justice, education, health, and housing. That's why this building exists. That's why the Urban League exists. That's why you have civil rights organizations. Our fights are about closing achievement gaps, about affordable housing, about justice. If you paid attention and invested in the things we ask you to invest in, you wouldn't have people protesting in the streets. If we really had justice and equity, we wouldn't need to raise our voices in this way. We have been pushing and crying and pleading for investment in root cause change. And instead what we get is police budgets increased.
Yeah.
So y'all pay for Band-Aids,
Right.
but nobody wants to take the time to do the surgery. That's the issue.
That's it.
Those are the problems. You cannot continue to attempt to educate black children in a system that was created to exclude them. We have to fix it. And it's going to take money. And please don't tell us we don't have it. Because we just watched the President of the United States take the time to sign his name to stimulus checks that ended up in a whole lot of Americans' savings accounts. And some places like Harvard University and Ruth's Chris, which we have one here, sent their checks back. They didn't need those millions of dollars. So we send welfare to folks who don't need it, and people who do need help, we assume they are hustling the system. So our community is always judged by that which is least among us. And we're tired. And I'm standing here today with this JD, with these 2 honorary doctorates, with a nice house with central air, with all the privilege that I have in this city, telling you that I am tired. That ought to concern you. Be on notice. Because when people who have everything to lose get exhausted, you have to listen. And I am crying out on behalf of the people who don't have the power to call a press conference. All right? Another thing, we have read the latest article about Breonna and her relationship. And I think that the point is to say to the protesters, you see now, this black woman was not respectable enough. You've been out here protesting over somebody who doesn't even deserve your time. Let me tell y'all something. We watch you arrest white women, and they get handcuffed, and they get walked into jails. Our law enforcement knows how to de-escalate, They know how to take people into custody, even people who fire on them. Go just Google videos of white people the police didn't kill. Google it. And look at how much information you will find. It can be done. Yeah. The challenge is that we are not valued. That's the challenge. And we need your help. So again, I'm calling on the business community to stand up. You don't have to wait for us. You say, we care about our community. Please don't get up and tell us how much you care about the buildings. We know that. We care about our community. We care about the people in our community. We understand the need for justice. We need you to stand with us. We don't want to see our city slip down this slope any further. We need answers. We cannot heal until we get them. But we have got to have some long-range vision about how we come out of this. And it is not to go back to what was.
That's right.
That is not an acceptable existence.
That's right.
So I am going to open this up for questions for anyone who wants to ask questions. And let me just say this last thing, because this will probably be a part of some story. It is my understanding, and I was certainly in contact with corrections last night, it is my understanding that the head of corrections, we learned this actually yesterday, his wife passed suddenly. We offer our condolences. And please understand, no one is targeting any head of corrections, any person in corrections. This is about system change. This is not about people. This is not about your heart and her heart and my heart. This is about how you change systems to help people reach and believe they can reach the same American dream you've been fighting for. That's what this is about. So don't personalize this, okay? This is about system change. I am no longer interested in changing anybody's heart, but I want to change your response to my blackness. And in order to do that, there must be consequences for police and every other person holding space in broken systems. Okay? And with that, I open it to questions if you have any for whoever.
Sure. City Girls
Okay.
A few months ago, you released that open letter to Mayor Greg Fisher. You called him a friend, someone you once respected, but that you no longer think he has what it takes to bring us out of this. Do you still feel that way today?
The mayor absolutely is not positioned to bring us out. I think trust has been damaged, and it was getting damaged before. I happen to be on the board of the chamber. I'm in a lot of different boards and different committees, and what people won't say publicly, from grassroots to very high-level executives, is that they lost confidence in his decision to continue to keep the chief of police. Many people talk with him privately. Whether anybody will admit it or not, I don't know. I don't really care, but I have no reason to lie about it. People wanted the chief gone. They saw the challenges. This was not the department that the mayor inherited. And I am not saying that the police department was perfect. I don't think there is a perfect department anywhere in the country. They all need to be reformed. That being said, some are better than others. The department he inherited was better than the one we have now. So there has been a shift. Something happened. And not only did the mayor, unfortunately, hire the chief of police, but he stuck by him for a long time when things were happening. And so we have the Explorer case, where we have two officers in prison now. We have, and the FBI continues to investigate that matter. We have officers who've been indicted for theft of time. We have the officer who's alleged to have assaulted the woman at the gas station. We have this case. And so many other things that there's so much more. Leadership is a challenge. And so I don't know right now that the mayor can stand up and say, here's what has to be done, and that the city will follow. And so it is unfortunate.
Is part of you calling on people and business owners to stand up because you don't believe the top person in the city can make a difference?
So I don't even want to make it about that. What I want to say is I think business leaders have a duty to stand up. This city belongs to all of us. We're all here. We're all invested here. Nobody wants to see our community boarded up. None of us want to live like this. I think the business community, because they understand, listen, they know what their board looks like. They know what their leadership team looks like. They know how many people of color they interview or they don't interview. They have to deal with their own challenges, and they need to step up to say, we haven't been as responsive as we should have been. Hell, you know what your newsrooms look like. And put that on. What's your next question? Okay.
When I talk to Mayor Fisher about some of the things we're seeing here in Louisville, he often says, well, yeah, and every city around the country is dealing with this. Everyone's dealing with this. We're trying to make it through. Are you seeing particular issues that are unique to Louisville and things that he should be addressing because they're happening in our community and not just a national problem?
Yeah, I think that the deflections of the national issue bifurcates the reality of what we're seeing on the ground. That there is poverty that is pervasive in Louisville, Kentucky. The militarization of the police in Louisville, Kentucky is egregious. I have traveled across this nation engaging and organizing communities and have not seen the level of militarization that I saw at a peaceful demonstration yesterday, beyond very few experiences, much like in Ferguson or in Baltimore where there were uprisings. Yesterday was not an uprising. Right. We burned nothing down. We actually demonstrated in the daytime. In communities we had already canvassed. At an announced demonstration. And I know that the press has been in our trainings. I train people in nonviolent direct action and love and action. So yes, these are particular issues that we find problematic in Louisville, Kentucky, which is why we decided to move here and to relocate here to amplify the work that our friends on the ground have already been talking about. They've been frustrated with Mayor Fisher before we arrived, right? And so I think that the mayor needs to do his job or let someone else do it.
Let me add something too, please, on the matter of the response. The very first night, peaceful protesters were met with pepper bullets and tear gas. And we certainly did have, I think 7 people were shot the first night of protest. But that was after police responded with aggression. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind because now the narrative gets to be, oh, if the protesters would only, the protesters. This is very important. Peaceful protesters have been met with aggression, and over again that happened in Louisville. Now it calmed down, but let's walk through the damage from that. David McAtee would be alive, but for pepper bullets being shot at not even protesters. Right. People who were violating curfew, people who probably didn't even know there was a curfew because they had nothing to do with the protest. They were doing what they do. They were out there hanging out, going to the restaurant, and they were met with pepper bullets by LMPD and the National Guard. And as a result, we all saw the video. We know what David McAtee did, and now he's dead. We are not condoning anybody breaking the law. But what we are saying is, and please don't condone these morally corrupt, these ethical violations of humanity that we are seeing. That's what we're asking people. Stand up and say, why did our city allow pepper bullets to be shot at people for curfew violations? Why is the city deciding that you cannot cross the bridge on Central? Why? I mean, what is the reason? It's far from the highway. I cannot understand it. Why do we have these lines? Why allow people to march? They're not tearing anything up. They're not breaking anything. There weren't enough people out there to hold an hour. It wouldn't have taken an hour to cross that bridge. Traffic was more backed up in the time that it took to arrest everybody than it would have taken for them just to walk. Right. That's and I thought, now Churchill Downs, okay, maybe they're saying they don't want any damage at Churchill Downs. People were marching away from Churchill Downs. So it just makes no sense. And let me say this. I do need to say this because I get emotional. Y'all know how I am. I know many of you all are doing a very good job with diversity in the newsroom. But I also think we have to think about leadership too. And I think it's important. It's important for all of us to hold ourselves accountable And so it's tough, right, to report on stories where even the industry you're in is a part of our challenge too, quite frankly. So please don't take it personal. This is about systems. But you know I'm going to tell the truth. I should have said it nicer, but I did need to say it, okay? I'm sorry.
You talked earlier about social media, helping the cause, getting the word out, but do you think that social media has also hurt your peaceful protest because of, obviously yesterday everybody, we can all say that we heard this was going to happen, this was going to happen. Do you think that has also hurt it in some way as well?
Yeah, I think that social media allows for a lot of people to have a microphone. But coming from the organization that organized this demonstration, our narrative was always clear. Good Trouble Tuesday, in honor of Representative John Lewis, and we actually put flyers out with the location to meet, with where we were going, and the time. And we had conversations with leaders, mayors, police officers, majors, so that they were aware that these narratives of we're 7,000 cars going to shut off highways, we had never narrativized that. And so I don't think that social media is to blame as much as the leadership of the city, who should have done the work and vetting and had been prepared for peaceful demonstration. They were prepared for the extreme and not prepared for peace and for nonviolent resistance. And that is where the provocation occurred.
Peter, in light of what happened in Wisconsin last night, I know there's a big focus obviously on peaceful demonstrations. Is there any increased worry that going forward, as far as a security risk that outsiders would come in, something like what happened in Kenosha and kind of that sort of things, and people end up getting hurt?
I think you won't have to worry about outsiders. You're going to have to worry about the Louisvillians who are fed up and tired and are willing to take their energy and righteous indignation in a different way. Is that, this is the narrative of outsiders coming in and burning things down is the narrative and the trope that's sexy. But in reality, there are people who are here on the ground who were arrested last night trying to protect a sister who had been ran over by the police, who were violently attacked by the police and shot with rubber bullets and pepper sprayed while they carried their weapons in an open carry state. And so I think there's always room for others to come in and to change the narrative, but there is a level of structure and organizing that comes from the grassroots of people in Louisville that we meet every Tuesday morning with Justice and Freedom Coalition, No Justice, No Peace, the Urban League, March on Frankfurt, and Kentucky Alliance, and all these other organizing grassroots groups, and BLM as well, who are strategic, some of them more than others, but collectively all have a vision of advancing black liberation. And I think that there is enough power on the inside from Louisvillians who are willing to take their own stand. And we're here to stand with them.
Sadiq, you alluded to it earlier, but do you have a response or a reaction to the leaked LMPD report about the Breonna Taylor case?
I think that LMPD is sort of playing catch up. I think whoever leaked that report wants to say, see, this is why. So now you understand why we did this. And what we want to say back is it doesn't justify her death. And that's what we need to stay focused on. There's nothing in that report that makes me say, oh, now I understand. Now I understand why she's dead. That is not what happened. I understand what they're trying to do, but I think it's important for us too to look at the dates of the phone calls that were made, because if you're talking about jail phone calls that were made after her death, then that's not something the police would have had information about prior to going into the house. So that wouldn't even be anything that could have been presented to a judge because they would not have known it. So I think timing is everything. My questions always are, who knew what, when did they know it, who did they tell? So I'm curious about who prepared that report, for what purpose, who directed them to do it, and how did it get leaked, and why was the person who created the report, why was their name redacted? So I think now we ought to get an investigation into that. I'd like for the Attorney General and the FBI to continue the investigations they have now, but I'd like for this one to be the next one, if I could ask. I mean, because I think it's important, because it borders on obstruction of justice when you have this kind of investigation going on and then you have that sort of thing be leaked. So I think we have to be very careful about who knew what when and what is being released and how accurate it is. And I also think it's interesting when police decide to rely on people that they normally wouldn't trust. So they hear that, it's just very interesting. I want to say something else, though, about your question earlier around outsiders coming in and potential for violence. That's really, we're here, I am here, because I'm concerned about the potential for violence. I am concerned about what I am seeing, and I am saying to people in this city who love this city as much as I do, to help us make sure that our city does not go up in flames. We cannot have that. We have to be better than that. But that really requires a sufficient response. That really is going to require justice and all of us working together, really being committed to change. So really, part of why I'm here today is to say we can't do this alone. And you do have lots of different types of protesters. And Kaepernick kneeled quietly on the field, and people felt like he was disrespectful and disruptive. And now here we are. And people feel like peaceful protesters trying to walk across a bridge are disrespectful and disruptive and deserve to go to jail. So I'm saying to you, we're going down the wrong path, Louisville. You're pushing down the wrong people, Louisville. We got to deal with this pain. We got to deal with our policies. This could end badly. We don't need that. We have to figure out a way to stand together. We have to find consensus where we can. We must do that. We owe it to our children. We owe it to those who came before us. That's what we're saying to you now. All right? Any other questions, anybody?
Are you
Yes,
aware
ma'am.
of anyone who got out of jail last night was rearrested? There was like a rumor of that going on.
So I have no idea. I can tell you they had the name of every person who was marching with Until Freedom and was arrested. So there were other people last night who might have been arrested that had nothing to do with the event that Until Freedom organized. And I've understood that maybe people were saying, oh, I did this, I did, but that every person finally at, what time did you get out?
10:30.
At 10:30 this morning was released from custody, and none of those people who were engaged with Until Freedom was rearrested. Go ahead, Pastor.
I'd like to address some of what has been said. One, your question about the letter that was leaked, and just put it in some other, or in a context, in a particular context, to suggest that that kind of thing is really typical when black people are hurt or killed, especially killed. There's always this, almost immediately, let's dig into their past to somehow discredit them as a person, to imply that they deserve what happened. That's exactly what that is in my mind. It is totally irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. Regardless of who anybody is with or doing, they should be free to sleep in their own house and be safe. And so there's no excuse. So if you want to look at it properly, look at the issue, the case and the facts about the case, and not let it be clouded by what kind of person they're trying to suggest she is, by the narratives they're creating around it. There are a whole host of people who know positive things in their life as well. But all of that is irrelevant. The issue to me is, and always has been, that there should be safe places for black people, and there is no safe place right now. You can't name a place a black person has ever been where something like that has not happened to them, whether it's in their house, eating ice cream, whether they're jogging down, whether they're at church. There's no place in America that's safe for black people, and that's a real issue. Also, with regard to the business community, nobody wants businesses more than black people. And we don't have businesses in our community. Right. And some of the business persons are really sensitive to this and are trying, and I've talked to several of them, their ears are opening and they're trying to listen. Others have not been as responsive, and they're frustrated because their businesses are boarded up. And it just happened to them. It's never happened to them before. But if you go in the West End, there are houses built, boarded up, businesses boarded up, schools boarded up. And so, welcome to our world. And unless people stop being so tone deaf to what they're being told, until they listen, then it's going to get worse, I believe. Finally, Sadiqa said that she was talking about changing people's hearts. And I'm in the heart business. I'm a pastor. And so we're in the business of changing people's heart. Well, I also realize that sometimes it takes longer to change hearts than policies. And Dr. King once said that laws can't make you love me, but they can keep you from lynching me, and I think that's important too. And what he's suggesting is, while we're trying to change your heart, in the meantime, it's important that policies are changed and structures are reformed so that lives can be changed. And I think that will come once, it can come, in part, once people see the humanity of black people. They're not statistics. There's nothing. Our color is not a crime. There's nothing to be afraid of. We're not the boogeyman. See us as the other human beings. And I think if we get to the point where we can do that, then I think that's a good starting point in terms of dealing with the core issue, and that is inequities and racism in our system.
Just want to remind everybody too that we put together a document called A Path Forward, and that document talks about affordable housing. The city has title to more than 100 properties in the West End. Some of them have structures, some are vacant, some need to be torn down, some can be rehabbed. We would like, within the next 18 months, for nonprofit and for-profit developers to come together to figure out a plan and build to revitalize this community with a pathway to black ownership. It's not enough to fix up the community. It's not enough to just fix the houses. We want a pathway to black ownership. That's a very good response to redlining. That is the right thing to do. When your country creates policies that don't allow you to own, don't allow you to take out an equity line, don't allow you to acquire wealth, hold it, pass it down to your children, to next generations. When you have been so left out of the economic engine of a country, it is the right way to respond. That is one of the things we're asking for. We're asking for scholarships. We saw the city, we saw others raise money and invest in Evolve 502 and other organizations that are trying to create scholarships for our kids to have educations. We have to do that. We have to close this achievement gap. We ask you, as you report on this story, to include the path forward. That Pastor Williams said something that is so powerful to me. We are dying to have businesses in this community, but to get a business loan, to invest in our dreams, even to tap into some of the care resources that are in the city, it is a challenge. So please understand, while people are protesting police, they are really also protesting a history of violence against us, even when you see clean hands. So I would say the president that creates the policy that kills us, the police officer that uses the badge and kills us, the man in the community who responds to the broken policy and the police oppression and kills us, all of it, all of that root cause, at the root of that is the creation of things that have always been in place to destroy, break down, and keep down our community. We are asking you to come together to help us fix this. Help us get through this. It is not as bad as it could be. And it doesn't have to be if you just step up. You do not have the right to be silent. Thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go back to her real quick.
Grab my phone.